He took the beating to protect her child. Now the alien mother wants him forever. The crate hook was already swinging when I stepped in front of the child. I did not plan it. There was no moment where I weighed the choice. 1 second I was walking through the market ring of Vaith Station with 3 credits in my pocket, and the next second I was standing between a small blue alien girl and a grown man who wanted to hurt her. Her name was Tiv. I did not know that yet. All I knew was the sound she made, a high broken cry that did not belong in a crowded market, and the way she pressed herself against a shuttered stall with nowhere left to run. 3 men stood over her, dock workers, by the look of their gloves and the grease on their sleeves. One of them, a heavy man named Derek, held the hook low at his side like he had already decided how the next minute would go. I did not think about the size of him. I thought about the girl. I stepped between them and raised both hands, empty, open, so nobody could say I came looking for trouble. "She is a child," I said. "Whatever she did, I will pay for it. Leave her alone." Derek looked at me the way a man looks at something in his way. He told me to move. I did not move. What happened next did not feel real while it was happening. It felt real only after, when I was lying on the cold floor of the market with my ribs screaming and my ears ringing and the taste of copper in my mouth. I remember small claws gripping the back of my jacket the whole time, holding on so tightly it left marks. Tiv never let go. Even while I was down, 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 even while I was down. I remember Tiv still holding on, refusing to be pried loose, until someone gently explained that I needed a doctor and she would see me again soon. I woke up in the station medbay under a white light, every breath aching in my chest. A face leaned over me that was not human, but was not frightening either. Sharp lines, a smooth blue shell where skin would be on a person, and eyes so dark they looked like they held whole galaxies inside them. "You are the one," she said. Her voice carried 2 tones at once, like 2 people speaking the same sentence in perfect harmony. "You stood between danger and my daughter." I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "She was scared," I said, because it was the only thing my aching body would allow me to say. The woman did not answer right away. Her name, I would learn, was Sarah Vaughn. As I watched, the smooth blue shell across her face dimmed, losing its shine, the way a light dims when the power behind it grows heavy with feeling. "Among my people," she finally said, "there is no greater debt than this, to stand between harm and a child who is not your own blood. We have a word for what you have done. It does not translate cleanly into your language. The nearest human word would be claimed." I did not understand what she meant, and my ribs hurt too much to ask her to explain. I only knew that something had shifted, quietly and completely, in the space of one afternoon. For 4 days after that, Sarah Vaughn visited the medbay every single cycle. She brought food I did not recognize, and watched carefully to make sure I finished every bite. She brought Tiv, who curled up in the chair beside my bed, and fell asleep with one small hand fisted in my blanket, as if she was afraid that letting go would make me disappear. On the 2nd day, Sarah Vaughn spoke with the station doctors without asking my permission, rearranging my recovery schedule like it already belonged to her to arrange. On the 3rd day, she brought a soft blanket from her own ship and placed it over me without a word, the way someone tends to a person they have already decided is theirs. On the 4th day, she sat at the edge of my bed and told me something that changed everything. "Under the law of my people," she said, "a person who shields a child at cost to their own body becomes bonded to that family, whether they intended it or not. This bond is not a symbol, it is real. It carries protection, and home, and kinship, for as long as that person wishes to hold it." I asked her what that meant in practice, still half convinced I had misunderstood the translation. "It means," she said, "that my ship is your ship. My clan is your clan. My daughter already believes this to be true, and she is rarely wrong about such things." I told her I appreciated everything she had done, but I already had a life, a small cargo ship of my own, docked 2 rings over. a route I had spent years building. A name on the manifest that was mine alone. Sarah Vaughn listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her long hands together and said something I did not expect. I am not asking you to give up your ship, or your route, or your name. I am asking you to consider that a home can hold more than one thing at once. She paused, and for the first time since I had met her, the fierce and steady woman in front of me looked uncertain. I would like you to stay near us, not because you owe it, out of want. The debt only gave me the courage to say so. Tiv stirred in the chair at that moment, blinked open her large dark eyes, saw me watching her, and smiled the gap-toothed smile of a child who has already decided something and sees no reason to discuss it further. I looked between them, the steady mother and the small, sleepy child leaning against my side, and I thought about how 3 days earlier I did not even have enough credits for dinner. Now a woman from another world was offering me a family built out of gratitude and something that was quickly becoming more than gratitude. I told her to ask me again, once I could stand without wincing. Her shell brightened at once, glowing warm and gold, the opposite of how it had looked the day we met. I intend to ask you every single day until then, she said, and every day after, if you allow it. Tiv, still half asleep, murmured something in her small piping voice. The translator on my wrist rendered it simply as stay. Word of what happened in the market spread fast across the station. By the time I was cleared to walk on my own, people who had never spoken to me before were nodding at me in the corridors. Some thanked me, others just looked at me differently, the way you look at someone who did something you are not sure you would have had the courage to do yourself. Derek and the other 2 men were removed from the station within the week. I did not ask for that. Sarah Vaughn told me it was simply how things worked when a claim had been made and a debt had been recognized by station authorities. I did not question it further. I was still learning how much weight her people placed on what I had considered, in the moment, a simple choice. On my last night in the medbay, Sarah Vaughn brought Tiv to say goodnight before I was released the next morning. The little girl climbed carefully onto the edge of my bed, careful of my ribs, and placed something small and smooth into my hand. It was a stone, polished blue, the same shade as her shell. She said it was a piece of her home world, carried across many light years, and that among her people, such stones were given only to those who were trusted completely. I held it carefully and thanked her, and she wrapped her arms around my neck in a hug that lasted far longer than any 4-year-old hug should reasonably last. Sarah Vaughn watched the 2 of us with her shell glowing that same warm gold, and I understood, finally and completely, what she had been offering me from the very first day. It was not a debt, it was not an obligation. It was a door, left open, waiting for me to decide whether I wanted to walk through it. 3 days later, once my ribs had healed enough to move without pain, I found Sarah Vaughn on the observation deck, overlooking the stars, Tiv, asleep against her shoulder. I asked her if the offer still stood. She turned to look at me, and her shell brightened so quickly and so brightly that for a moment it lit the entire deck. "It has stood every single day since the moment you stepped in front of my daughter," she said. "It will stand for as long as you wish it to." I told her I wished it to stand for a very long time. Tiv, without waking, tightened her small grip on her mother's shoulder and smiled in her sleep, as if she had heard every word and had known all along exactly how this story would end.